G'day everyone, thanks for checking out my latest pickups video. If you haven't watched my last two, highly recommended. We'll leave an annotation somewhere on the screen to check those out. First video definitely focused on quantity. I picked up a lot of games, not a huge amount of really good rare games. With the exception of one or two, was mostly about the quantity. My second video was definitely about quality. There was some really good games, just not as much. Today's video, however, I feel like is a combination of both. Not only do I have a heap of games to show off, the quality is really good. There's some really heavy hitters here. Games that I've wanted to pick up for quite a while now. So I forgot to mention it in my last video, but I picked up the latest Doom. It's fucking awesome. It's such a good game. Not the type of game that I'm usually into. I was never into the old school Doom games. FPS is usually have to have an RPG flavour or something to get me hooked. But Doom is amazing. Pick it up. I bought it digitally, so I obviously can't show you. So yeah, let's get stuck in. First up, I'm going to show you something that's not game related, but I was buying a game off another seller and he had this at the same time, and it was like $5, so I had to pick it up. And it's a hardcover comic collection, Spider-Man, and it is Kraven's Last Hunt. There you go. Put a little back artwork there. If I had to pick my two favourite superheroes or comic heroes, it would definitely be Spider-Man and Batman, with X-Men close third. I'm not a big comic reader. I don't read a lot of comics. I definitely don't collect a lot of comics. I do have a few over here, you probably can't see it. I have a few hardcover collections, mainly Batman, but I'm happy to have a little Spider-Man one as well. It's not particularly expensive one to pick up. I think get this new for like $20, $25. I got this for like $5 from the seller. So yeah, happy to have that. Don't know if I'll ever read it, but hey, happy to have it. Next up, I've got some PC games to show off. I'm not a huge PC collector. I've got a fairly sizable big box collection, but I don't go out of my way to buy PC games. I find I just pick them up on a whim every now and then. I'll just happen upon a game and I pick it up. There's very few games that I'm actively seeking out on the PC. But I got these for fairly cheap, and they were ones that just happened to pop up while I was looking for other things. So first up we have Colin McRae Rally 3. Couldn't tell you if it's good. I haven't played a Colin McRae game. Colin McRae Rally, sorry, I'm a bit dyslexic. I haven't played a Colin McRae Rally game since PS1, since the first one. Not big into racing games anymore. I definitely played a ton on the PS1. But over the years my tastes changed and I mainly moved towards RPGs and stuff like that. So hey, happy to have it. I've got that on, I think, PS2 as well. So if I ever play it, I'll probably play the console version, but hey, happy to have it. Next up we have The Last Express, and this is a adventure game. And for some reason I kept thinking that this was based off a movie. It's not. It's actually it's a unique action, well, not even action, it's a point-and-click adventure game. And the hook on this game is that it's all hand-drawn graphics. It's absolutely gorgeous. So that's probably why I was thinking it was based on a movie, because it looks like it could be a big-budget animation movie. And from what I heard, there was plans to make a movie based on this game. Whether they will ever end up doing that, I don't know. But it looks beautiful. It's all real time too, so you have a clock ticking, and I believe you've got to take that into account when playing. Not a huge point-and-click adventure game connoisseur, so I'll probably never play it. But hey, it's a big box PC game. I love picking these things up. Happy to have that go on my shelf. And last but not least, on the PC we have Giants Citizen Kabuto. I never played this game, but I remember I used to be big into reading video game magazines back in the day, and this was getting a lot of hype, a lot of attention, and from what I remember, it was like a hybrid game. It was part, I think, real-time strategy, part maybe third-person-y action shooter, maybe with a bit of RPG thrown in. And from what I read, from what I heard, the game turned out to be really, really good. And it definitely lived up to the hype that surrounded it. I remember seeing ads for it in months and months and months of magazines, probably PC Gamer or I couldn't even tell you the name of the magazines that I used to read. I was big into the PlayStation magazines, not so much the PC ones, because I never had a PC that could run a game like this until years later. Now I can play anything I want, but yeah, back then I was mainly a console gamer, unfortunately. But yeah, it looks really cool. Looks like you can play as like giant monsters. It's got like a real-time strategy element, I think, as well. So it looks really cool. Maybe a game that I may consider playing one day. Whether I play the CD version or I just pick it up off like GOG.com, I'd imagine it's probably up there. Yeah, so that's my PC games out of the way. Next up we'll look at a different system. As you can see, I've got a big pile of PS1 games. I don't know if I mentioned it in my last videos, but I'm a huge PS1 collector. It's probably my favourite system of all time, and I am aiming to get a complete PAL collection one day. It's a huge system library, so it could be years before I fulfill that dream, but I'm slowly getting there. I'm probably upwards of 300 games now. I'm probably not even halfway, but hey, you gotta have a dream, right? First up, we have Duke Nukem. This is of course a port of Duke Nukem 3D. If you're trying to play this game, obviously pick up the PC version. You can get it for a couple of bucks on GOG. You can probably get it on Steam. Probably buy it from 3D Realms website. They're somehow still in business. I don't know how. So yeah, there is actually quite a big community that play these old school first-person shooter games. I remember there was a lot of buzz about this and the Saturn port. I can't remember which one is better. You'd think the PS1 port would be better, but I think maybe even the Saturn version might be better. I can't remember for sure. But obviously, if I'm ever going to play it, I'm just going to get it off GOG. I've probably already got it on my account, to be honest. Next up, we have Colony Wars for PS1. I really don't know a lot about the Colony Wars games. I know I have Colony Wars Vengeance, I think, on the PS1. The case is a bit munted. That's just the joys of collecting PAL PS1 games in the dual cases. They are so susceptible to damage. It's not funny. You've got to protect these up really good when you're posting them, otherwise they will crack. But yeah, happy to have Colony Wars. I don't have any particular connection with that game. Ape Escape is next. Obviously a classic game. See a few stickers on the box, but that's fine. It's on the box itself. I could easily take out all the inserts and replace the box. That's probably the one good thing about PS1 is that if you have a cracked game, have a cracked box, you can easily swap it with another fresh box, which I've done before and I'll probably do again. Ape Escape, one of the first, if not the first games to utilize the DualShock, the DualShock pads on the PS1 controller. I remember picking up one of those controllers, and it took me a while to get used to it, but you could obviously never go back to the strictly D-pad games. And I remember playing, I think it was Final Fantasy VII, and I couldn't move my character for some reason. I realised I needed to use the DualShock. So that was a lesson for me, young me playing games back in the day, that I had to move on from the D-pad and get fully three-dimensional movement. Next up, we have Alien Trilogy. This is another game that I remember there was a lot of buzz back in the day for this game, mainly because it was a truly first-person shooter experience, and it used both DualShock knobs, one to obviously move your character, one to look up and down, left and right, and it was fairly revolutionary for the time, because before that most first-person shooters were in the style of the old school Doom games, where you wouldn't really look up and down easily while you're moving, and you'd probably shoot and it would automatically hit an enemy as long as you had it lined up correctly. Whereas Alien Trilogy, was one of the first, if not the first games to use both DualShock knobs to make it fully three-directional. So if you wanted to hit that enemy up in the top corner, you had to look up there and shoot him. You couldn't just shoot in a line and expect the bullet to hit him. Next up we have Casper, obviously based on Casper the Friendly Ghost, classic movie. Couldn't tell you a single thing about the game, whether it's good or bad, no clue whatsoever. Resident Evil, there's a lot of hype surrounding Resident Evil, especially after the Resident Evil 7 announcement and the subsequent demo that's come out. That's strangely a lot like PT, and probably holds some secrets. I already have Resident Evil on the PS1, but I have the director's cut. I believe, I could be wrong, I believe the only difference between the two is maybe the director's cut has some better camera angles, some better control over the camera. I don't think it introduces anything new in terms of gameplay or experiences in the game. I think it's mainly about control and the camera. Could be wrong, but hey, happy to have the original to go alongside the director's cut, which also comes with a demo for Resident Evil 2, which is a lot of people's favourite game of all time. I was never big into Resident Evil. I mentioned it on the first or second video that I did on my pickups, where it was one of the first PS1 games I saw when I was young, and it scared the piss out of me. I had nightmares for months after watching Resident Evil 1. It was horrifying, but nowadays I can play through horror games no problem. One of my favourite games of all time is actually Dead Space, the original, so there you go, that game's pretty horrifying too. Next up on the PS1 we have Lion King. It's Simba's Mighty Adventure. I don't remember a lot about this game. I love the Mega Drive Lion King game, and I'm pretty sure it came out on the Super Nintendo as well. This one looks more 3D than the previous generation's Lion King game. Is it any good? I don't know. I'll probably never play it, but hey, happy to have it. Millie Magilia, I have no fucking clue how to pronounce that. I have heard this name before. It's obviously a race or something, a popular race, potentially taking place in UK. Couldn't tell you a single thing about it, other than it's a racing game, which I'll probably never fucking play in my life. Last but not least, we have Descent 2. Obviously a sequel to Descent 1, which came out and it revolutionised a whole genre of gameplay. It was a truly 3D perspective game where you could go up, down, left, right, you could go back, you could go forward, you could traverse these huge maze-like levels, and they weren't just a flat linear path. They were literally would span vertically, horizontally, and they were huge. So it's obviously the sequel to Descent 1. No idea if the PS1 ports of the Descent games are comparable to the PC ports. Obviously, if you're playing these games, mouse look is probably a must. But hey, happy to have it. So that's all my PS1 games to show off. Next up, we're going to have a look at a PSP game, and this is Breath of Fire 3. Not much to say about this game. It's a port of the PS3 Breath of Fire game. I personally like 4 better, but I remember 3 being pretty cool. And if I remember correctly, you had four party members in any battle, which was fairly new for me at the time because I was always used to having 3. 3 always seemed to be the golden standard of however many party members that you would have at one time in a battle. But if I remember right, Breath of Fire 3 had 4. Could be wrong. Could have just pulled that out of my ass, but that's what I remember about Breath of Fire 3. Next up, we have 2 PS2 games. First up, we have Armored Core 2. I played the crap out of Armored Core 1 on the PS1. I have no idea if this lives up to the original, but happy to have it. And next up, we have Glass Rose, which has the most bizarre cover I've probably ever seen. It looks like Bruno Mars or a soul singer or something. This is like a horror adventure game. I don't know if you can see it, but it's like a horror adventure game. Fairly uncommon, potentially even rare. It's not hugely there's not a whole big market for this game, unlike like something say like Rule of Rose, where there's obviously people are willing to pay hundreds of dollars for it. Yeah, me too. But Glass Rose is fairly uncommon, published by Capcom. I don't know, I think Capcom developed it as well. Don't think it was a great game. Maybe that's the reason why not a lot of people go out of the way to buy this. Maybe it's decent, I don't know. But it's definitely a forgotten game, and definitely not something people bring up when they're talking about classic horror PS2 games. Next up for the Xbox, I have 2 exclusive games, or at least exclusive to the Xbox over GameCube and PS2. First up we have Mad Dash. Couldn't tell you a fucking thing about this game, but it was an exclusive, so as I said previously, one day I would like to complete my PS2 collection, but I do like to pick up exclusive Xbox and GameCube games as well, because there are some fantastic games on those systems. And next up we have Galleon. This game looks like absolute trash, and as far as I'm aware, this came out on Xbox and also mobile. That probably tells you enough about how good this game is. It does not look good. It could be wrong. Maybe it's really good. It just judging by the cover and the back of the box, it looks like shit. Next up we have Gods for the Mega Drive. This is made by the Bitmap Brothers. That took me about 5 tries to say that right. They're a fairly popular, fairly important couple of developers who made some really good games back in the day. I remember they made a game called Z. It was literally the letter Z, which was really good. And they made some other really good games too. So Gods, I thought it would be a real-time strategy game or something, but it looks more like a shoot 'em up or beat 'em up. Next up, I'll show off some Game Boy Advance games. I picked up two RPGs, 2 really good RPGs. First up, Telefantasia. Don't think I've ever played. I played a few Tales games. I don't know if I played Fantasia. And next is Golden Sun, The Lost Ark. This is of course a sequel to the original Golden Sun, and I remember playing both of them back in the day, and if I remember correctly, this game takes place roughly, like literally just as the original Golden Sun finishes, so it sort of picks off straight away, if I remember correctly, which I suppose my memory is pretty bad, so I could be remembering wrong, but I thought that was pretty interesting. So yeah, great game. It comes with a little map and everything. Next up, I've got a Nintendo 64 game to show, and it's just a single one. It's Charlie Blast Territory. It's like a puzzle game, fairly uncommon. It's a bit shiny because I've got it in a box protector. It's complete with manual and game and boxing, etc. Fairly uncommon game, potentially even a bit rare. Obviously, like most cartridge-based games, finding the cartridge itself is not too hard. Finding a game's boxed complete in decent condition is significantly harder. I remember back in the day when I first started collecting, I used to collect PS1 games, and they were always really simple to find complete in box. But then I started to move away from PS1 and move into SNES and Mega Drive and Nintendo 64, and the difference between a cart and a complete game was fairly high. Now it's phenomenal how much more you will have to pay to get a complete game over just a cart. So if you're looking to collect, I highly recommend do not try and do complete collections because it's super expensive. But I made that decision back in the day that I would only collect complete games. Occasionally I'll pick up a non-complete game. It's probably because it's cheap. And there's probably something that I'm going to flip later or try and complete, like by buying parts separately. But Charlie Blast Territory, couldn't tell you if it's good or bad, but it's pretty hard to find with the box and manual. Next up we have 2 Super Nintendo games, and then there's one more game to show at the very end. If you haven't watched my last 2, I usually save the best for last. My personal favourite pickup out of the lot, I'll save at the very end. First up, we have Wolverine Adamantium Rage. I was originally trying to get this on the Mega Drive, and I happened upon a Super Nintendo copy of it instead, so I picked it up. I will eventually get the Mega Drive version as well, and I do want to do a video on all the Super Nintendo and Mega Drive Marvel games, because there's quite a handful, and some of them are really, really good. Some of them not so much. This looks pretty good, so happy to have it. The Super Nintendo obviously way more expensive than the Mega Drive game. Both fairly expensive though, to be honest. Next up we have one I've wanted for a long time, and this ActRaiser. Super stoked to get this. This is a unique game. It's a part strategy, part sort of base building game, part action, side scroller, part RPG. Excuse me. It looks really good. I've played it on emulator back in the day. I highly enjoyed it. So yeah, happy to have this. It's fairly uncommon to get this boxed complete. If I remember correctly, the American version came with a map. Unfortunately, the PAL version did not. So we got duped on that. But yeah, super happy to have it. Obviously, you can see the box isn't in the best condition, but it's complete. The box holds together nicely. It'll look really good in a box protector up on the shelf with the rest of my games. But not least, we have a SEGA Saturn game, which is my pick of the lot. It's a game I've wanted for a long time. I've been trying to get it. It's really expensive. It's getting harder and harder to find. It's not Panzer Dragoon Saga. I actually already own that game. This, however, is Deep Fear. This is a SEGA Saturn exclusive horror. I'd say a sort of a horror, survival horror game akin to maybe Resident Evil. It comes on 2 discs. I'll open it up and show you. It comes on 2 discs. This also came with a different language manual for Paraguay or something like that. So, but it does come in English as well. Like a lot of PAL games back in the day, the games came in multiple languages. Now this one is super expensive and super hard to find. I picked it up for a pretty good deal. Obviously expensive as it is, but compared to what I've seen it going for, it was definitely, I think I got a good deal. And I got the ship from some European country. I can't even remember the name of it. But it's the same version that you'd buy in the United Kingdom as well. So super stoked to have that. With this game, I feel like I've got most of the heavy hitters for the SEGA Saturn. I've got Panzer Dragoon Saga, I've got Deep Fear, got a few other really good expensive games. So that's a system that I do want to start giving some love to eventually. But for now, I'm really enjoying just collecting for Super Nintendo and PS1. They're probably my favourites. So yeah, thank you so much for checking out my latest video. I do plan on doing these every month or so. I've been buying a lot of games, way too much. I've been spending way too much money. But I will, every time I'll just get a big chunk of games. I'll do a video, I'll talk about all the games. Hopefully have stuff to say. Not all games I obviously have a personal connection to, so I might not have much to say about some games, whereas others I will have lots to talk about. So yeah, thanks for checking them out. I do plan on doing these again soon, so keep an eye out, subscribe, comment, etc. Thanks. Bye.